Good morning, world. This is the Propaganda Critic. Today is Saturday, November 25th, 2017. And today I'd like to talk to you about why corporations are not free market institutions. So what I'll do is I'll start by discussing what is a free market as I understand it. So in my understanding of it, a free market is a system of individuals voluntarily interacting and exchanging resources. A free market arises from adherence to the principle of the non-initiation of force. This non-initiation of force does not preclude the use of force in defense of one's person or property. So, by the initiation of force, I've broken down into three basic categories. One would be a violation of another's right to autonomy and self-ownership. You could think of this as physical coercion. Two, a violation of another's right to property, or the right to use the product of one's own labor. Three would be a violation of contract, or lying. So let's take a look at the concept of a corporation, and then we'll bring them together. A corporation is a legal entity without natural rights. A corporation is what is called an artificial person, which is granted rights and responsibilities through the force of law. But unlike a natural person, a corporation does not have agency beyond that of its shareholders, employees, and managers. By creating an organization of individuals, of natural individual persons, without this make-believe personhood, with this make-believe personhood. So when you endow an organization of individual natural people with personhood, and you're labeling that organization, that invisible symbolic entity, you're labeling it as having responsibility and rights in and of itself. What you're doing is you're absolving those natural persons who control the corporation of legal responsibility for the actions of the organization. And in order to do this, they have to... The only way this can be the case is if the coercive power of the government prevents the enforcement of justice on those individuals who committed the acts. So, for example, if a corporation inflicts harm upon you, you are prevented through the coercive power of the state from pursuing justice against the entities ultimately responsible, those natural persons who have built and ultimately controlled the corporation. An example of justice being skirted by corporations, very well-known, horrible example of this is the Bhopal chemical spill in India. So I'm going to quote, this is a quote from Amnesty International. I'll link to their website. But here goes. Quote, on the night of 2 December 1984, toxic gas leaked from a pesticide plant in the Indian city of Bhopal, killing between 7 and 10,000 people within 3 days of the leak. It was the biggest industrial disaster in modern history. The plant was owned by U.S.-based chemical giant Union Carbide Corporation. On paper, the Bhopal victims had at least two options to pursue justice. The Indian courts, the courts of the state in which the atrocities were committed, commonly referred to as the host state, and the U.S. courts, the courts of the state in which Union Carbide Corporation is incorporated, commonly referred to as the home state. The Bhopal victims pursued both. However, decades of litigation in both countries only led to further frustration and anger within with very little effective corporate accountability and reparations. UCC, though charged with culpable homicide in India immediately after the disaster, has for almost 3 decades failed to appear before the Indian criminal court to face charges. It remains today a proclaimed absconder from justice in the country. It's a clear example of what happens when you hide behind the veil of corporate, I don't know what you call it, corporate shielding of responsibility. It is indirect violation of the non-aggression principle. And what I mean by this is, well, if you think about it, what are rights? According to the Declaration of Independence, we are endowed by our Creator with inalienable rights. Now, one thing that I find interesting about this idea of the individual and the individual's rights is the individual cannot be divided. Indivisible. It's but if you divide a person, if you cut a person in half, it's no longer a person because that person cannot live. If you cut a corporation in half, it just becomes 2 corporations. Also, corporation has no autonomy. It is not an entity in and of itself that makes decisions. It is controlled. Just like if you were driving a car and you ran over a child, you would be liable for the actions of that vehicle. You could not say, oh, that car killed that girl, we're going to destroy that car. No, because you are still accountable for the actions of that vehicle because you were controlling it. It's common sense, but we've been duped into believing that somehow corporations are people and corporations have responsibility that those controlling the corporations are absolved from. That is fundamentally why corporations are not free market institutions. And by creating corporations, you're absolving people and enabling them to violate the rights of others and to not be held accountable. And that actually bypasses the free market and encourages actions that violate the rights of others. So that's the gist of my spiel on why corporations are not free market institutions. I have some pretty interesting sources that I would encourage you to read. I will link them in the notes at the bottom of the video. And I encourage you to comment. Let me know your thoughts on this matter. I would love to debate. And hopefully we can build some awareness of this fact that it is not the free market, but the coercive legal structures that are harming our society, and that the free market is the answer. So please like, share, comment, subscribe, donate if you got the money, if you got the time. If you think this is worth helping to grow, I would greatly appreciate that. I want to change the world for the better. I want to bring awareness of important issues to the public. So once again, thank you, and I will see you guys next time.